Scuba diving. A video about something different tonight. What's scuba? Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. What's that all about? Roll the intro. After I used some drinks to help me get better, lighter, get my operations, get my hips done, I'm able to get back into what I call a normal life again. And part of that is getting back into scuba diving. Now, about a decade ago, I did my dive master training, but I never actually finished it. So now I'm going back to the scuba club to get back up to that sort of level again, where I can assist with instructors, teaching courses, but then I'll advance through all the different steps that I need to get through to get me signed off as a dive master. And then we'll see if I go to assistant instructor and instructor next year, which would be interesting. But part of my dive master capabilities, I have to be able to demonstrate putting a scuba kit together. Now, I've recently bought myself a second-hand tank through the club. It's been pressure tested. I did a video on these the other day. I've got the BCD and regulator, which need servicing. They're going for servicing this weekend. They're absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with them. But if you were 30 metres down, 100 feet down, scuba diving, and a valve blew, you're out of air. The consequences could be lethal. So we don't want that. So even though it's hardly used, since the last time I had it serviced, I would have much rather get it serviced. You're on the ISS, you're going out into the vacuum of space, and someone says, yeah, it'll be all right, don't worry about it. Right, so I'm going to show you now how I'm going to put the scuba kit together. If any of you are scuba trained, you're going to probably pick up a load of errors that I make. That's absolutely fine. I'm making this video to show you what I'm up to with my new life, or back to my normal life. But it's also a training video for me, so I can watch it back and go, oh yeah, I need to sort of think about that a bit more. So, right, I shall reposition the camera, sort the gear out, and come straight back to you now. Because I'm going to be in front of the camera for most of this, I've plugged my microphone in and clipped one onto me. Right, so let's get started. So this is my scuba tank, and I'll place it just there. Let me just check the camera and make sure that's in a good position. No, that's perfect. Right. So several checks to carry out first. Now, normally, there'd be a piece of tape over here to protect it so that we don't get anything going in there. So this is a high pressure air cylinder. This one is steel. You can get aluminium. You can get carbon fibre ones these days. And inside here is 3,000 psi of air, or the way that we describe it, 232 bar. 1 bar being equal to one pressure, one atmosphere pressure at sea level in the UK, around the world, which is 14.7 psi. It's even the same, sort of 3,000. That's compressed air, not oxygen. People describe these as oxygen tanks. They're not. If you had pure oxygen and went down a few meters, it could actually be lethal. Right, so one of the things I want to check is make sure that the seal's good. There's no nicks or scrapes in the seal. That looks all right. It's a brand new one. I only put it in the other day. That's fine. And then we have the date on here when it was last tested. These are hydro tested, so they fill them full of water and pressurise them to a higher pressure, the safety test pressure, and it passed on that. In 2.5 years' time, there's a visual, but I'll just have a quick look at it now. There's no nicks, dinks. It hasn't been dropped. It's absolutely fine. We don't really like to leave cylinders stood up because they are quite heavy. They weigh about 30 pounds, maybe 35, full of air. And you don't want that to fall over on someone's toe. It would break it. Right. So the part of equipment I couldn't find the other day is the BCD. So this is a buoyancy control device, and I'll demonstrate what that does in a bit. But all of this added together creates the the self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, which is the scuba of scuba diving. So I'm just going to thread this over the back here. I will turn it around in a second so that you can see what I've done. So I align that handle with this hole, with the air hole here, and I want this about 3 fingers width down from the top of the tank. Now, that's going to need to be adjusted. I think the other tank was a bit smaller. I will adjust that and start recording again. Right, so I've adjusted this band. I shall reposition, so I align this up so that's square to the top of the tank. I'll lift this up and position it so it's about 3 fingers width from the top there, and I clip it on. Right, what have I just done? So my particular strap hooks through. Some of them don't have the hook through. It's all adjusted otherwise. That's down, that's locked, and you heard me pushing on that hard. This is a little safety device, so that if for some reason, you know, you clip some coral or something and it catches that as you try and pull out of the way, if the tank starts to fall, that retains it, and that's just a little carrying handle. Right, let's turn that back to the front. So we now have 2 of the 3 components. We now have the air tank and we have the BCD. Right, so I'll now get the regulators, called various names. The octopus. Give me a second. Right. So what we have on here is we have the diver's regulator. That can be any colour you like, generally black. That can either have a yellow front, be all yellow, or any combination of that, but it's yellow on the front. That is your spare. And when you dive in with someone, you always dive close enough together that within one breath you can get to the other person. And if you indicate that you are out of air, you do a cross finger across your throat, cross sign, then you grab that from them, okay? So the 2 regulators go on one side. I've got a hose here, which I'll tell you about in a second, and then I've got me pressure gauge, which I'll show you. So I will undo. There's a dust cap thing in there. Rotate this around. Why is that? Strange. Anyway, I will keep going with the way it sits at the moment. Right. So that's on. I've not done it particularly tight. It's not overly tight. That's fine. So these 3 lines are in the medium pressure. So this takes the 3000 psi, the 232 bar, into here. At this side of the valve, which is where my pressure gauge is, it's still at 232 bar, but on this side of the valve, the pressure's dropped down. I can't remember exactly what the pressure goes down to, but what I'm going to do with this is we have here a part of the BCD. I'll pull the dust cover off there. I'll connect this hose up, and then I will feed that back. There's a clip that sits in, just there. So I'm going to do all this again in a couple of weeks when I go and do my scuba review, so I can get back into diving again. And then obviously this is going to go on to, as I do, start doing the dive master helping. Right. So we have my regulator. We have my spare regulator. That looks to be in the wrong place. And then we have my gauge. So what I have on this particular gauge is that's your dive depth, and that's the air pressure. Now, I think it was on this one, it's not too bad, but the gauge is actually slightly off. It actually reads 10 bar already, which you shouldn't do. Right, so let's pressurize this, and what I want you to watch for is all of these getting stiffer, and you'll notice this particular hose get a lot stiffer. Now, if I put 230 bar, 3000 psi into that gauge, and the gauge explodes, bits are going to go everywhere. So I've got my foot on it, it's on the floor, it's out of the way. So I'm going to, this is the main on-off valve, so I'm going to turn it on slowly. Listen. I don't know if the microphone picked that up, but I could hear it, it came up slowly. So I'm going to open this all the way up. Now, the standard convention at the moment is open the valve fully. As an engineer, I'd say never do that. This isn't a training video, this is just me practicing. I would actually come back off the stop about a quarter of a turn. Right. So if I have a look on the gauge here, I think this gauge is reading a bit off. Because that shows, that's reading 280 bar, which it won't be. It'll be 230, 240-ish. But part of getting the serviced. So if that's stuck on, say, 30 bar, and I started the service when I was at 50 bar, I'd only actually have 20 in there. And for every 10 meters you go down, the water pressure goes up by 10 bar. So you could be 25 meters down and actually run out of air because the air in the tank is the same pressure as the water pressure. Right. So first regulator. So that's called the first stage. This is called the second stage. This has been sat in my sofa for the last couple of weeks or the last few days. Anything could have crawled into that. So we give it a purge. We push the button on the back, let some air through, proves that it works. And then there's air holes on the side here, which lets all the air out. Now, some people will ask you the question, well, what happens if I'm sick underwater? You keep the regulator in. Anything that you've taken down will come back up through the regulator and will come out. It's all little chunks, so don't worry about that. But you just constantly breathe. So to check my gear over, I'll place it in my mouth and take a couple of breaths. That feels good. The air feels good. I don't feel dizzy or anything. Now, a good demonstration. I'm going to take a couple of breaths and then you're going to watch the gauge. And you'll notice it didn't move. If I turn this valve off and back on a little bit, let's see what happens. So if you haven't opened your valve properly and you've gone underwater, so that was draining the air out of the system. If your valve's only partly open, you won't have a problem on the surface. It's only when you go down. And I've been on a scuba system down to 30 meters, 100 feet. And when you take a breath, this comes halfway back. Now, if you were panic breathing, and you in, out, in, out, in, out, you'd actually get to the point where you overbreathe the system. Now, that's where what you trained is gentle, steady breaths. You know, if you realize that you're taking bigger breaths, slow down, especially when you're at depth. Right, so I've done that for my main regulator, and I check my secondary regulator. So that's okay. So that's fine. This portion here senses the water pressure. So the deeper down you get, there's more pressure acting on that, and it feeds air to you at a higher pressure. So these are designed to go, I don't know what depth they go down to, 40, 50 meters or something like that, maybe further, but we're only certified to 30 meters, or I am, and that's what these are designed for, and that's what they do. You'll hear them rattling a little bit. That's because they're in the air, not in water. Right, so I mentioned this piece earlier. This is your inflator, deflator. Quite often, or all the ones at the Scuba Club, the top button's here. But the way I think of this is you've got the pipe work coming in, you've got a valve, and this adds air through this into your jacket. And this is what it looks like. And in a moment, if I keep going, you'll hear it start popping. That's quite a slow. That's quite slow. But that's an overpressure valve. We also have releasers. Put a bit more in. Check that release. Has this one got one? Some of them have a. There's actually a release on there. It doesn't. The one doesn't work. And then there's one down here somewhere, and that lets the air out. So there we go. That would be my all my checks done prior to kitting up. So you collect everything, everything goes together. Everything is collected into the middle. Once you've let all the air out, we just sort of put it all together, pull all the straps straight, and then turn the valve off. Use a regulator to depressurize, pull all this together, depressurize again, and then we lay it down. And that is all ready to get geared up. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm going to have a look at the video afterwards and see what I've done wrong. I'm going to lay it down for now because I can feel it wobbling. Oh. And so there we go. So having lost a load of weight, having reversed my type 2 diabetes, having just generally improved my life, there we go. That's how I sort out my BCD.